The little boy was sitting beneath his mother's desk when the office manager slammed a termination letter onto the table and told her that being a good mother did not excuse breaking company rules. What nobody in that bright afternoon office knew was that the boy was not the first child to hide beneath a desk because his mother had nowhere else to take him. And before the day was over, the company's new owner would walk through those glass doors, look at the frightened child, and quietly say something that would leave the entire office frozen. "I was that kid." If you believe kindness can change a person's life and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Kindness Tales, because sometimes the smallest act of compassion becomes the beginning of an entirely different future. Maren Whitlock had spent years learning how to survive without asking anyone for help. At 32, she worked as a junior administrative assistant at a prestigious financial firm in the center of the city, earning just enough to keep a small apartment, pay for groceries, and make sure her 8-year-old son, Silas, never felt the weight of the adult problems surrounding him. Maren was the kind of woman who arrived early, stayed late, finished every assignment carefully, and apologized whenever someone else bumped into her. She had built her reputation quietly, believing that if she worked hard enough, nobody would notice how close she always was to falling behind. That Tuesday afternoon, however, everything went wrong at once. The school had closed unexpectedly because of a maintenance problem. Her usual after-school sitter had called to say she could not come, and Maren had no family nearby who could pick up Silas. She had begged her supervisor for permission to leave early, but an important client presentation had been moved forward, and she was told that leaving would be unacceptable. So Maren made the decision she knew might cost her everything. She brought Silas to work. She told him to stay quietly near her desk with a book and a small notebook, promising that they would go home as soon as she finished her urgent tasks. Silas tried hard to be invisible. He sat beneath the desk because he was embarrassed, occasionally drawing pictures while his mother typed reports and answered emails. He had brown hair that refused to stay neatly combed, a navy sweatshirt, worn sneakers, and the serious expression of a child who had already learned that adults sometimes worried about things children could not fix. For nearly 2 hours, nobody complained. Maren worked faster than she had ever worked before, checking spreadsheets while keeping one eye on her son. Then Silas accidentally knocked over a pencil holder. The sound was small, but in the tense office it seemed enormous. The office manager, Corinne Vale, appeared beside Maren's desk and immediately saw the child. Her expression hardened. She did not ask why he was there. She did not ask whether he was safe. She simply told Maren that company policy prohibited unauthorized visitors in the workplace and that she had compromised the professional environment. Maren tried to explain the school closure, the missing sitter, and the fact that she had completed nearly all her responsibilities. Corinne listened without sympathy, then placed a printed termination notice in front of her. Maren stared at the paper as though the words belonged to somebody else. She had expected embarrassment. She had expected a warning. She had even expected punishment. But she had not expected to lose the job that paid for the roof over her son's head. Silas came out from beneath the desk, his eyes filling with tears as he realized what was happening. He reached for his mother's hand, and Maren squeezed it tightly, refusing to cry in front of him. She packed her belongings into a cardboard box while the afternoon sun streamed through the office windows. Co-workers looked away, pretending to be busy. Some felt sorry for her but were too afraid to speak. Maren walked toward the elevator with Silas beside her, holding the box against her chest and trying to think about what she would tell her son when they reached home. She had no idea that someone else was already walking toward them. The elevator doors opened. A tall man in a dark blue suit stepped out with 2 executives following behind him. He was Callum, the company's newly appointed owner, who had arrived that afternoon for his first surprise inspection. He was 38, composed, successful, and known for being intensely private. Everyone in the office had heard about him but almost nobody had met him. Callum stopped when he saw Maren carrying the box and Silas holding her hand. His eyes moved from the termination letter to the child. Then something changed in his face. Callum slowly walked toward Silas, but instead of looking at him like an employee's problem, he looked at him as though he were seeing a memory from decades earlier. He noticed the worn sneakers, the nervous expression, and the way the boy stood slightly behind his mother as if trying not to cause trouble. Then Callum looked at Maren and said the words nobody expected. "I was that kid." The office became completely silent. Callum explained that when he was 8 years old, his mother had worked cleaning offices in a building very much like theirs. There had been one terrible afternoon when his school closed unexpectedly, and she had no one to watch him. She had brought him to work because she could not afford to lose her job. He had spent the day hiding under her desk while she worked, terrified that someone would discover him. By the end of that day, his mother had been fired anyway. Callum remembered walking home with her while she carried a cardboard box filled with her belongings. He remembered how she smiled at him and pretended everything would be fine. He remembered the fear in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. Most of all, he remembered what happened afterward. They struggled for months. His mother took temporary jobs, cleaned houses, worked weekends, and eventually found another position. She never blamed him. She only told him that sometimes life punished people for circumstances they did not choose. Callum looked around the office and said that memory had never left him. He then picked up Maren's termination letter, read it carefully, and asked why a hard-working employee who had completed her duties was being fired for bringing her child into the office during an unexpected school closure. Corinne tried to defend the decision, but Callum stopped her. He explained that rules mattered, but so did judgment, compassion, and the ability to recognize when a person needed help rather than punishment. Then he tore the termination notice in half. Maren could barely believe what she was seeing. Callum did not simply offer her the job back. He created a temporary family support policy for employees facing unexpected childcare emergencies, arranged a small supervised family room in the building, and instructed managers to speak with employees before making decisions that could destroy their livelihoods. He also apologized to Maren for what had happened, making it clear that she should never have been placed in a position where choosing between her child and her paycheck seemed like the only possible choice. But the most emotional moment came when Silas quietly handed Callum the picture he had been drawing beneath the desk. It showed a little boy holding his mother's hand beside a tall office building. At the top, Silas had written, "My mom always takes care of me." Callum stared at the picture for several seconds. Then he smiled. He told Silas that his mother was lucky to have him, but Silas corrected him in the simple way only a child could. He said that he was the lucky one because his mother never gave up on him. Callum looked at Maren, and she realized that the powerful man standing in front of her was still carrying the little boy he had once been. Maren kept her job, but more importantly, she stopped feeling ashamed of needing help. Over the following months, she became one of the company's most trusted employees. She eventually helped design the new family support program, ensuring that other parents would not have to choose between earning a living and caring for their children during an emergency. Silas occasionally visited the office through the proper family program, no longer hiding beneath a desk. Instead, he proudly walked through the bright lobby beside his mother, carrying his backpack and waving at Callum whenever he saw him. Years later, Callum would say that becoming successful had never been the moment that changed his life. It was the moment he recognized himself in a frightened little boy standing beside a woman carrying a cardboard box. And Maren would always remember that the day she thought she had lost everything was actually the day someone finally saw her struggle and chose compassion over judgment. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us that one compassionate decision can change an entire life. And before we reach the ending, I want to ask you something special. Comment, "Kindness gives second chances," if you believe nobody should be judged for needing help. Because sometimes the person sitting beneath the desk today is the person who will change the world tomorrow. Sometimes the mother carrying a cardboard box is only one kind decision away from finding hope again. And sometimes, the greatest proof that we have healed from our own difficult past is not forgetting what happened to us, but choosing to make sure it never happens to someone else. On that bright afternoon, Callum did exactly that. He saw the child he used to be, recognized the mother his own mother once was, and turned a painful memory into a second chance for someone else. And that is how one small act of compassion transformed a firing into a beginning, a frightened child into a symbol of hope, and an ordinary office afternoon into a reminder that kindness is sometimes the most powerful rule of all.